Hey, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in to All Hands on Deck on this wonderful Tuesday afternoon. I am Ira Ackery. I am your host, and to my right is my wonderful co-host from Oak Park, all the way in Oak Park, radio announcer Doris Davenport.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much, Pastor Ira Ackery. It is absolutely my pleasure to join Pastor Ackery here on All Hands on Deck. We are excited to be here. We're going to be talking with you about All Hands on Deck. Sure. Why don't you give us the mission for All Hands on Deck?
We're going to have to get back to the mission in a second because we are being featured with a very special guest today, all the way from New York. He is keeping it real. He is keeping it real, and he is embarking upon a great journey wherein he's trying to empower and get 1,000 ministers to recommit to the social justice mission and movement in America. It is the one and only Reverend Al Sharpton. Reverend Sharpton.
Keeping it real.
Hello there. How are y'all? How you doing, Reverend Ackery?
We are doing well, Reverend. How about yourself?
I'm doing very well,
Reverend Sharpton, this is Doris Davenport. I am so excited to talk with you today as well. Thank you for joining us.
Well, always good to hear your voice, Doris. Thank you for having me.
Well, we know you're real busy, Reverend, and we thank you for squeezing us in. We just had a great meeting with you here in Chicago with ministers and priests, and even a couple rabbis were there on the west side of Chicago, Reverend Hatch's church, and we talked about two things. Number one, we talked about getting this mayor in Chicago to honor his word and not backpedal on doing his part to make sure that consent decree with the police department is implemented. And we also talked about that 1,000 ministers march that we are going to have with ministers coming from the east, west, north, and south to meet down in Washington with you so we could take it to them dream busters. Would you like to tell us something about that march real quick, sir?
Well, on August 28th is the 54th anniversary of Martin Luther King making the speech that went into history known as I Have a Dream. And in that speech, Doris and Reverend Ackery, he addressed the issues of voting, he addressed the issues of poverty, he addressed the issues of police brutality in the North, he addressed certainly the issues in terms of health care. All of those issues are at stake now with the new Congress, the new administration. So we're calling on 1,000 ministers of every faith, every race, to come with us and meet at Martin Luther King's memorial that morning and march with us to the Justice Department to say that these principles, the four principles of Dr. King's speech, voting, health, criminal justice reform, health care, and poverty, should not be a Republican or Democrat issues. These are issues of moral concern and of social justice. Do not destroy the dream.
Do not destroy the dream.
Don't destroy the dream. Don't be a dream buster. When Donald Trump went into office, Barack Obama had a bust of Martin Luther King in the Oval Office. Donald Trump says, I'm going to keep the bust in the office, but I'm also adding Winston Churchill. Don't keep Dr. King's bust in the office and throw his dream out of the office.
Wow.
And that's what we are saying on August 28th. So we're asking ministers of all faiths to sign up. We think it will be a dramatic picture around the world if they can say 54 years after a black Baptist minister told the world about a dream, 1,000 ministers came to uphold that dream 54 years later.
Absolutely. And Reverend, as me and Doris were preparing for this time with you, we really dealt with some real issues that people who mean well and who support the movement, some concerns that they have about this particular march. and I'll defer to you.
So one of the questions that people are asking is really, how do we avoid the post commentary? You know, people will be real quick to look at the march and say, oh, you know, this is just another march.
Sure.
And you know, I think about my grandmother who used to say, all motion ain't progress. So the question that we have is, what is going to happen after the march, and even what's going to happen there? Will there be an ask, a demand of the administration?
The demand will be around the areas, the 4 areas that we said. And I think that many people, Doris, that raised the question about another march does not understand what a march is for.
Amen.
A march is not to solve a problem. A march is to raise a problem.
Yes.
And if we don't raise the problem, there's no urgency to solve it.
That's
What
good.
did the right wing do? They started marching with the Tea Party, translated that into the midterm elections, and took to Congress. If we don't raise our issues, then how do we then have those issues organized to try to put the right people in when you have not even made an issue out of it?
That's
One
right.
of the things that I said on my radio show today is that people talk about another march. Well, name me when we had the first black march since Trump been in. We haven't had any.
We have had no marches since Trump has been in office. That is so good.
Immigrants march. We've seen the women march. Black folk, and particularly the black church, has not stood up and said anything in mass.
Yes. And Reverend Sharpton, I have to tell you that when I heard about this, I thought about the ministers, and when I heard about it being 1,000 clergy all across the nation of all faiths and economic backgrounds, I'm so pleased because what this does, this is a demonstration for the clergy, for ministers to reclaim their position as leaders in the social justice movement.
And that's what Dr. King did. Don't ever forget, he named his organization the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. And let us not forget, last Monday, evangelical leaders went in the Oval Office and laid hands on President Trump.
Oh.
Well, who's going to lay hands on those that are going to lose their Medicaid? Who's going to lay hands on those that are poor and unemployed? That's what the ministers must stand up. We're not against praying for the president, but we don't want the president to pray, P-R-E-Y, on the poor, on victims of police brutality. They just had a policeman kill a white female in Minnesota, unarmed, a black cop. We're against that. If you don't stop it now, it's going to happen to everybody. That's our appeal. The moral leaders must step back up. We've sat back too long.
Let me ask you this, Reverend Sharpton. I'm on the front line every day, and it's a golden opportunity for us to use the temperature that we have and the context in this country to pull faith leaders out of the barracks and onto the battlefield. Let me ask you this. It seems like that the influence of the preacher in this particular context has been drastically diminished. So even though back in the 60s, Martin Luther King was a preacher, Bevel was a preacher, and Reverend Shuttlesworth and Reverend Abernathy, young Jesse Jackson, they were preachers. Well, in this context, can the ministers really have the same impact with the social justice movement as those brothers did back in the 60s?
Yeah, not only they can, they must, because even though we're in another century and another time, the largest gathering place of black people on a weekly basis is still the church. There's nobody that gathers that amount of people on a weekly basis.
That's an excellent point.
So we've got to bring them in. A lot of people attack the church, but where do they gather? Where are their people?
That's right.
And where are they accountable to? People know how to go reach you, Reverend, every day, at least once a week. They know how to reach a Reverend Marshall Hatch. They know how to reach Southfield. A lot of people that grab a megaphone when something happens, we don't know where they come from and where to reach them after that. If you look at the last 5 years, Doris, the issues that ignited a lot of the movement, if it was Trayvon Martin, if it was Ferguson, if it was Eric Garner in New York, preachers led that. Reverend Al Sharpton, we started that. A lot of people came in, but they didn't start it, and they've not remained with them. All of those families were in New York with me over the weekend with Eric Garner. They've not heard from a lot of people. And it's all right for people to have different tactics. They attacked Dr. King. They were those saying, don't go to the March on Washington. But it led to a year later having the 64 Civil Rights Act because it helped to generate a movement that elected the people. And that's what we're going to do. So we don't mind the detractors. In fact, I don't feel we're effective if you don't have criticism, because if ain't nobody upset, that means you haven't changed anything.
Absolutely.
That's so true. And Reverend Sharpton, I believe that the ministers really have a great opportunity, because I work with young people every day for the first time by choice this summer in a leadership program that I'm running. And one of the things that I found is none of them have a church home, but they all have a moral compass. And when I ask them, if you had a church to join, would you? And they say, we wouldn't mind going to church. So there's a lot of young people out here. Each one of them represents 10,000 like them with a mindset. We just have to go where they are. We need to start invading these youth programs all around every major city and suburb. So what are we going to do with the Department of Justice? We've got this situation in Chicago since the Laquan McDonald murder, and we have a mayor who absolutely has determined that he does not want to move forward following the advice of the Department of Justice.
In fact, Reverend Sharpton, he made a commitment that he was going to work with them, but when Jeff Sessions basically said, you know, forget you guys.
Right.
You don't have to honor the consent decrees under Obama's administration. This mayor has backpedaled, and he thinks that he can implement whatever changes he wants without any interference or any oversight from a federal judge. And we don't trust that type of scenario.
Well, we've seen what oversight, we've seen them do what they do without oversight all these decades.
Absolutely.
What are we to do, sir?
Well, one of the things that we must do as part of what we lay out at the Justice Department on the 28th is demand the consent decree is respected and regarded. Don't forget that this is done after an investigation of the department by the Department of Justice. This wasn't the leadership network that came up with these findings.
Absolutely.
This wasn't Doris that came up with these findings. The
Right.
Justice Department did it. So are you saying that you are defying and denying what the department that you head now, Mr. Sessions, found to be a practice and pattern in Chicago? Are you saying, Mayor Emanuel, with 1,000 ministers who will then tell their members of Congress that you must shun Rahm Emanuel if that's his position? We must make them nationally untouchable, to where no presidential candidate and nobody that's seeking high office would be there seen with them. If you're telling me that the FBI and the prosecutor's office under President Obama studied this and found practice and pattern in Chicago, and you're going to politically move away, then the whole world, we're going to make you a national example. That's what you're going to do, the same thing. If we did in my child years, stood up to Mayor Daley, we can certainly handle Mayor Emanuel.
And the thing about it, this is so unacceptable, Reverend, because it appears he has no respect for our community. The problems outlined in the DOJ's report, they are far too egregious for CPD to be reformed without federal oversight. It seems like he's asking us to trust the police to police themselves.
Well, I think the real answer is not how much respect he's got for us, is how much we have for ourselves.
There you go. There you go.
We really appreciate you, Reverend. Any parting comments? I know you got a meeting going on.
Everybody, Lottie Dottie and everybody, call your pastor. Call your pastor, your priest, your rabbi, your imam, and tell them, are you going to 28th to Washington? That's where they take an attendance on those that are going to make the dream come true.
Wow.
Against dream busters. Don't get marked absent.
Thank you so much, Reverend.
Thank you, Reverend Sharpton.
God bless you.
God bless you.
God bless you as well. Wow.
That is amazing. He said, and I want to repeat it for the people that's watching on Facebook Live,
Yes.
that you need to call your pastor, call your rabbi,
Call
your
your
imam
imam.
and call your priest and ask them, are you going to be in Washington represent me August 28th?
Don't count yourself absent.
Absolutely. The roll will be taken up yonder. I think we have a caller, Doris. Welcome to the show. You're on All Hands on Deck with Ira Ackery and Doris Davenport.
Yes. Good evening. Great show.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Listen, it's our fault. We, as I'm Mexican American, African American. Without our vote, Rahm Emanuel wouldn't be on the 5th floor right now. We put him in, not me. I didn't vote for him, but our people, enough of our people, believed him, and now look what's happening. You know what? If a 9-year-old or 8-year-old gets shot, killed, he comes on TV.
My friend, you got a comment? Make it real quickly, or your question. We're running short of time.
Yeah, my question is, we gotta put these people out of office that are still with Rahm Emanuel. Them are aldermen, Cook County commissioners, and they're our color, and still we can't get nothing done. Thank you.
Well, thank you for your call, and we will address that. You know, the caller brings up a great point.
Sure does.
And what he's basically,
Repeat it, if you don't mind.
what he's asking us basically, that we have a mayor in office that we need to get rid of, but he's also suggesting that we need to get rid of those who support the mayor, and or support the same types of policies that the mayor has. So, you know, there's an election coming up. There's an election coming up in 2018, and we need all hands on deck. For this election, it's usually the midterm elections when we go to sleep. We pay a lot of attention to the presidential election, but we go to sleep during the midterm election. And the time is now. We have about a year away. You see all the candidates for many offices already beginning to campaign. And we really need to be paying attention. This is not the time to go to sleep and ignore the commercials and ignore the pitches that you hear. You want to listen to every pitch.
Absolutely.
You want to listen for consistency. You want to listen to people because you want to know what kinds of decisions they're going to be making about your life. So we absolutely want to be paying attention to every race coming up in this midterm cycle.
When we look at that consent decree, some things that are brought up is the fact that civil rights were violated for blacks and browns, excessive force was used, and shooting to kill happened unnecessarily too many times. Then there's the blue code of silence. Oftentimes, you know, for me, Doris, and this is just me talking to a person who is a Christian, who is a law-abiding citizen, a person of good character and standards and values. Many times when we talk about these bad apples, you know, it bothers me because there's so many good police.
Yeah.
And you feel like a need to kind of like pamper them in the midst of trying to straighten out the systemic racism that exists. You ever think about that sometime?
Well, I do, you know, and it's funny because we were in the garden today looking at the apple tree. And in fact, there are 2 apple trees side by side, and there were some weeds growing around one of them. And the man who was leading the team to clean them out almost got rid of one of the apple trees because of those weeds. So you know the old saying that one bad apple don't spoil a whole bunch. That might be true, but when you have a bunch of bad apples, that can spoil a barrel, and sometimes you just need to get rid of the barrel. And we need some real house cleaning.
That's right.
I am so tired of listening to the mayor of the city of Chicago, even the police department, talk about blaming the community for not telling on their family members or telling on, we know what people need to speak up if they see crime. But in the police department, we need to see the same policies and procedures practiced. If you see something, say something.
And you know, we got to take care of this because you cannot tell the young people in the neighborhood to speak up when you see a crime or when you see somebody committing or perpetrating a crime, when you have people who wear blue suits committed and not be punished for their evil actions.
That's so true. That's so true. And that's why we know community policing works. Policing works when you have a relationship with the people that you're serving. If you have no relationship with the people that you're serving and you treat the community like it's a war zone, it shows, and people are going to respond accordingly.
We still have a little time here, Doris.
Yeah.
We got off to a late start because of technical difficulties. If you have a comment or question about this subject today, call us with your comment or your question, 312-738-1060. And while we're waiting, I want to just talk with you about a big event that's going to take place next month. It's going to be the Austin Community Festival. It's the Greater St. John Bible Church along with the Austin Empowerment Coalition. We're having the Austin Community Festival August the 12th. All day, 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. Free food, fun and games, comedy, stepping. We're going to have a clown on the show, a clown on the stage, a clown on the grounds, line dancing, zumba, face painting, health screenings, scholarship awards. Now that's the piece that I want to pause and talk about. We're going to try to bless 25 kids with $500 or $1,000 just to champion education. So this is a real big expense, nevertheless, but we want to pick out some of these students who have education on their mind and use this fun time together to invest in futures and not funerals. There is some good going on in the hood, and I'm thankful to be the president of the Austin Empowerment Coalition and the humble pastor of the Greater St. John Bible Church on the northwest side of Chicago.
That sounds really great. That should be something that everybody will want to attend. August 12th on Saturday. It's an all-day event from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m.
Many people will call about those scholarships, but nobody's jumping to say, I want to support and encourage. If you want to do that, feel free to call our office. 378-3300, and that's 773. So, Doris, we need to try to do as much as we can to mobilize these people in Chicago, these ministers. Your pastor, we got to get him in.
Yes, well, we'll give him a call. In fact, we'll get all the networks in. We'll put something together and send out a message, because we want as many clergy as we can on the 28th to be in Washington, D.C., marching on Washington to face these dream busters.
If you want to come and you are a minister, a pastor, a rabbi, an imam, or a priest, you can go to my website, our website, where I'm a member of, the LeadersNetworkChicago.org, LeadersNetworkChicago.org, and you can register today. It's been a blast. This lady, she has all the connections. You're going to have so many great guests coming in. It's going on. We're going to have to wrap it up. It's over. We got to go.
We'll see you next week, 4:30. Be there.
All right. God bless.